Hello everyone, this is Amritpal Singh. Welcome to the next video. In my previous video, I have talked about the deep learning basics. In this video, we're gonna talk about artificial neural networks under deep learning. And to understand the artificial neural networks, today we're gonna talk about the basic building block of artificial neural networks, which is neuron. So let's get started. So now let's in this case this is actual image of a real life neurons which has been smeared into a glass and colored a bit, and they are observed through a microscope, and this is what they look like. And you can see it's quite an interesting structure, a body and lots of different tails, a kind of branches coming out of them, and this is very interesting. But the question is how we can recreate that in a machine, because we really need to recreate it in a machine, since the whole purpose of deep learning is to mimic how the human brain works. We're gonna create an amazing infrastructure for machine to be able to learn. So our challenge right now, our first step is to create the artificial neural networks, is to recreate a neuron. So how do we do that? So in this case, you can see we have an image available. If we let's take a closer look of what it actually is. This image was first created by a Spanish neuroscientist, Santiago Ramon, okay, in 1899. And what he did was he dyed neurons in actual brain tissue and looked at them under a microscope. And then while he was looking at them, he actually drew that what he saw. And this is what he saw. And you can say you can see like he saw two neurons, or two large neurons over here, this one right at the top, which had all these branches coming out of them towards their top parts, and then each one of them had this thread coming out towards the bottom, right? So very long one. And yeah, so that's what he saw. And now technology has advanced quite a lot, and we have seen neurons much closer in more detail, and now we can actually draw what it looks like diametrically. Let's see how we can represent it in the diametrical form, right? So this is what it is look like. We all have seen this image in our textbooks of our science, like in our lower schools, so classes. So let's see, it's a here a neuron, right? It's what it look like. It's very similar to what Santiago Ramon drew over there. And here in this neuron, what we can see is got a body, right? And well, that's the main part of a neuron. Then it says it's got some branches at the top. This is called dendrites, and it also got an axon, which is that long tail, right, of the neuron. So what are these dendrites and what are this axon for? The dendrites are kind of a receiver of a signal of a neuron, and axon is a transmitter of a signal for the neuron. So this is how it look like, right? So moving further, now we are having in this case we have a image that how it all works conceptually. So at the top you got neuron, right? And you can see that its dendrites are connected to axons and of other neurons that are like even further above away above it. And then the signal from this neuron travel down its axon, and it connects or passes onto the dendrites, right, and of our next neuron, and that's how they're all connected. And in that all small image over there, this is a small image, right? You can see that axon doesn't actually touch the dendrites, right? The whole concept of a signal being passed, that's called as a synapse, right? So you can see over there in that small image that this little bracket, you can see at very bottom of the screen, right, it is a synapse. So basically how this is how that's how the neuron works. And yeah, let's move on to how we can going to represent neurons and how to create neurons in a machine. So now we are gonna switch from the neuroscience and moving into technology, right? This is how we can represent in more technical terms. So in this case, what we are having here, we are having a neuron, and sometimes it's also called as a node. The neuron gets some input signals, and then it has an output signal, right? So moving further, so in this case you can see that this neuron, this green neuron, right, is getting signals from this yellow neurons. So how even in the simple linear regression algorithm, you have a input values, then you have a predicted value. Same thing here, you have a input values, they are the yellow ones, right? And then on the right you can see it's a red, it's output value. So in the terms of input layer, the way to think about it is the analogy of a human brain. So the input layer is all your senses, right? So whatever you can see, feel, touch or smell, and of course it's like a lot of other things you can see. There's a lot of information coming in, but that what your information is limited to. It's pretty much the brain pretty much lives in a box out of bones, and it's a mind blowing concept to think about. Like your brain is just locked in a black box, like you can't see, you can't hear. The only thing it's getting its electrical impulses coming from these organs that you have, like ears, nose, eyes, your sense of touch, and then whatever, and your taste, right? So your input values, the signal is passed through synapses. You can see it's represented here to the neuron, and your neuron has an output value and it passes further down the chain. This is how it works, right? So like if we can move further, in this case you can see on the left side we have these inputs which are in fact the independent variables, the independent variable 1, independent variable 2, and independent variable m. So the most important thing to remember here is that these independent variables are all for a single observation. So you can think of it as a one row in your database. One observation, you just take all of the independent variables. Maybe it's the age of a person, the amount of money in the bank accounts, and then how they drive or walk to the work. So what kind of transportation do they use? This is how we can, like, this is all examples we can take, right? So this is all the we can consider it as the independent variables which are going to the neuron. So moving further, if we can go to the next point, in this case you can see in the right side now we have a output value. So what can our output value be? So well, we got a couple of options available. The output value can be continuous. Okay, let's suppose the example is maybe here we taken as example as like price. Then we have a binary, means yes or no kind of, and then we can have a categorical as well. So output can be vary from continuous, binary, and categorical. So moving further, in this case we got again the representation available, and we have some symbols available, w1, w2, wm. So what's that? So here we got synapses. These are synapses, right? And these all actually get assigned weights. Weights, we're gonna talk about the weights, right? The weights are very crucial to our neural networks functioning, because weights are how neural networks learn, by adjusting the weights. The neural network decide in each and every case what signal is important, right? What signal is not important to certain neuron, and what signal gets passed along, and what signal doesn't get passed along, or to what strength, or to what extent the signals get passed along. So these weights are very crucial. These are the things that get adjusted to the process of learning. Like when you're training out into a neural network, you're basically adjusting all of the weights in synapses across this whole neural network, right? So at the last, now we're having this question mark available. So signal go into neuron. So what happened in neuron, right? So this is a very interesting part that like we are talking about neuron today. So what happened inside the neuron? So we have a 3 steps available. The first step, the first thing and the first step is that all of the values that it's getting get added up, right? So it take the added, so do the weighted sum of all of the input values that's getting. Very simple, right? So it's very straightforward. So just add up, multiply by the weight, add them up. This is what happened in the first step. In the second step, what happened? So then we apply a activation function. This symbol, you can see its activation function. It's basically a function that's assigned to this neuron or into this whole layer. Then it is applied to the weighted sum. So here we apply the some kind of activation function, right? And so now in the last step, what happened? In the third step, basically what's happening here is, so the neuron will either pass on the signal, or it won't pass the signal on. So here's what exactly happened in step 3. The neuron passes on that signal to next neuron down the line. So it means we have a 3 steps process. First we are having this weights, then we are having, then we afterwards we are doing what? We are just doing the multiplication of weights to the this xi, and then afterwards we are just applying the activation function. Further we are just passing down this signal to the next neuron, right? This is how the neuron works, right? I hope you must have understood this this concept from this short little video. In the next video I'll be talking about more of it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next video.